Hello and welcome to Grouchy Geeks episode 68. My name's Steve, my co-host is Scott.
Hello.
This episode we've got a little bit of news and reviews. Not a lot, just some, because there's not a lot out there, to be honest. You'd think with the amount of geek material being produced there'd be some things worth talking about, but not a lot, unfortunately, these days, because a lot of it is rubbish. But then we've got an interesting main feature, which we'll come on to, so hold on to your hats for that one. We're gonna earn our title of Grouchy Old Geeks, that's for sure. So, what news in the meantime?
So it's funny you should say that, because there's a shout out that I want to do, and I want to do that shout out for a reason. So Dion, who we both know, and we play games with, board games online,
yes,
on a regular basis. He sent me a message. I can't remember what the point of the message was, but he messaged me on WhatsApp and mentioned about something that we'd mentioned in a previous show. And I was genuinely surprised, because I don't think of anybody listening to this.
A faithful listener. Hello, faithful listener.
So I expressed genuine surprise that he listened to the show. And he said, no, but we're out there. And one of his lines, which is my reason for giving him a shout out in this episode, is one of his lines was, you can sometimes lean a bit heavy on the grouchy. And I just want to say, Dion, if you're listening to this, it's genuinely a pleasure to have you here. But you might want to consider giving this episode a skip.
Yeah, we're gonna get into the weeds. I'm not gonna hold any punches.
So I think of this as being a positive show, because we're not tied down to what's currently on. Like, we'll talk about stuff from the 90s or before that. And so generally, I think of us as being quite positive.
Yeah.
This is clearly going to be a break from our usual positivity.
Yeah. We'll come on to that anyway. What news in the meantime? At least, what's good, what's happening.
So something that came out today. So I don't know whether you've seen it, but there was a new trailer for Thor: Love and Thunder that came out.
I have seen it.
What did you think to it?
I have concerns. What about you?
So they're not, to me, they're not trailers anymore, because it's a franchise that's been going on for such a long time, and all of those, the main people in the trailer were Thor, obviously, and the Guardians of the Galaxy, and you know who those people are, and either you love them or you hate them or you're indifferent to them. So probably you've decided in advance of seeing the trailer whether you're going to go and see it or not. So the trailer doesn't serve the traditional purpose of a trailer. And it's definitely, and I think they know that, because it's not constructed like a trailer normally is, right? There's nothing to go on. There's no content to it. It's just showing you a bunch of cool scenes and a couple of funny lines where Star-Lord is talking to Thor. So it's called a trailer. It's not really a trailer. But then again, it doesn't need to be a trailer anymore. What did you think?
You're right. At this point in film number 27 or whatever it is in the Marvel universe, you know all the players and you can kind of guess what's going to happen. And I know that it's hard to keep secret these days and avoid spoilers, but they've told us so much about it already. And it's based upon other things that we've seen before. And I think I know who one of the main villains is, because we've seen the actor and we've seen shots of that too. And I mean, it'd be so hard to avoid some of that information these days and not have spoilers. But even so, they've already given you some of the biggest moments in the film. They're in the trailer. And I worry. I mean, I like all the people involved. I like Taika with TT. I think he's very, very funny. But my feeling is this will just feel exactly like Thor Ragnarok.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very funny. A couple of moments that are quite poignant and that'll be quite moving. And then the rest of it will be very much on tone for his kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think, yeah, we've done that. Mm-hmm. You've done that already with these characters. Can we have something new? But if that's not the Hollywood model is, that was work, that worked, that made a load of money. Do us another one until, it didn't work now. Stop doing them.
There was something, so a while ago, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago now, at least a couple of years ago now, Martin Scorsese got loads and loads of flack over talking about that. I don't think it was really criticism. He was just saying that movies nowadays are like theme park attractions. You just go and see, they've cost $400 million to make.
Yep.
And they're just something that's a spectacle. You know what you're getting, but you're just getting like an incredible ride for 90 minutes or 2 hours or something like that. And I think he got loads and loads of hassle for it. Mm-hmm. But I really think he hit the nail on the head that you're not getting a Rocky anymore. That would be dumped on Netflix, right? However great a movie it turned out to be. And nowadays, it feels like nothing is going to come on at the cinema unless it's cost an absolute bomb to make.
Yes.
And it's a visual spectacle and nothing more.
Yep.
Or not nothing more. That's an insult to it, but it's the emphasis is on it being a visual spectacle.
Yeah. It's very rare. So the big budget, big box office things, franchises and others, you will get the cinema on the big screen because one, it costs a lot of money, and two, in order to recoup that money, you need as many people to see it as in a short space as possible. And then all the long tail sales from video on demand and so on. But those are the big franchises, whether it's Marvel, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's, Dune. Just the sheer cost and the scale of that to do everything in Dune, it had to be a cinema film. And that's probably one of the rare exceptions where art and spectacle combine to create something amazing in this modern era, where the $20 million film, the $40 million, the $60 million are pretty rare, that you're memorable and you come away going, that's one of the best films I've seen. Like In Bruges is one of my favorite films of all time. The budget for that is probably tiny because the cast is tiny and most of it's shot on set in Bruges. That nowadays, that'd be like a Netflix film. And, nothing wrong with that if it's a brilliant film and we still get to see it, but it wouldn't have the same effect of seeing a film in the cinema. I don't know. I do worry about the future of cinema in some ways, of the going to the big screen, sitting down with the surround sound. There are less films that even before COVID, I was inclined to go and see in person. I don't know. Yeah, I do worry. So I will see Thor and I'll probably quite enjoy it, but I don't think I'll come away going, oh, that's something, I'm going to be talking about in 20 years' time. Like we're talking about Rocky, Godfather, Apocalypse Now, you can reel them all off. Anyway, speaking of weird things that come to the cinema, here's a bit of news. The words I'm about to say, I never thought I'd say, right? Following on the success of the Sonic the Hedgehog films, Sega is set to turn another one of its properties into a film.
I'm really keen to guess.
Go on.
Is it Samus? I can't remember the name of the franchise. I can remember the name of the character.
I'll give you a clue.
Yeah.
It's a beat 'em up.
Not Street Fighter, no.
You're close.
Mortal Kombat?
No. Streets of Rage.
Oh, yeah, there's no story to that game.
Derek Kolstad, who penned Nobody and also the creator of John Wick, is going to turn the 1991 side-scroller, which follows a former police officer who battles a crime syndicate. There were multiple games that spun out of that thereafter. So they're looking to Derek Kolstad to turn that into the new John Wick, the new Nobody. Nobody was brilliant. John Wick was brilliant. Streets of Rage.
There's no plot to that game. Well, it's a great game, don't get me wrong, but there's no plot. There's no, other than trying to lean on brand recognition,
Yeah.
there's no point in doing a film based on that. Like Sonic the Hedgehog. I've not seen Sonic the Hedgehog. It could be terrible. It could be brilliant.
It's no Paddington, I'll tell you right now.
There's
right
no
now.
Paddington. But Sonic the Hedgehog is a recognizable character, right? There's something, there's a style to Sonic the Hedgehog.
The kids love it. The kids will love it. Go and see it.
You have a blue hedgehog.
Yeah.
Streets of Rage doesn't have that same.
It's Double Dragon. It's 50 other sideways scroll beat 'em ups. That's it.
Mm.
Anyway, we're getting a film of that apparently.
Brilliant.
I think it's the best way to discuss it. I have the news.
I have one more piece of news, and it might be old news. It was something that I was only became aware of this afternoon. And funny enough, we were talking about now only like mega stuff gets on cinemas. And everything else just gets. I've actually suddenly thought of something else I wanted to ask you, but for this, now only smaller stuff now just gets dumped on Netflix or something like that. And this is a car, and I thought I saw the trailer for this today. I've not seen the film, but I saw the trailer, and I really, really like the trailer. And this is some of the cast. By all means, not all of the cast. But this is a straight to Netflix movie that has Leonardo DiCaprio in it, Jennifer Lawrence, Meryl Streep, Cate Blanchett, Jonah Hill, Tyler Perry, Timothée Chalamet, who was Paul in June, Ron Perlman, Ariana Grande, Melanie Linsky. That's a ludicrous cast for something that is the modern day equivalent of going straight to VHS, right?
Yeah.
And it looks really good. It's clearly not a high budget thing. So it's about these two people, played by Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo DiCaprio, who discover that a huge asteroid is about to hit the Earth.
Don't Look Up, is that it or something?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Don't Look Up. But it's a comedy because it's like the Cassandra complex. They're there trying to warn people about it, and people are just so concerned about image and social media and all of these other things that they're just not getting the message across that humanity's about to be wiped out. And I thought the trailer was great, but the thing that really blew my mind was that list of people are now just going straight onto Netflix. It's absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I could well believe the budget of that thing was $100 million, but $99,500,000 went on the cast. And then the rest of the movie was just shot over a weekend or something.
Yeah, someone CGI in the basement just working it out. Yeah. It may be one of these films that was made in lockdown or before, and they've been sat on it and they just wanted to get it out and it wasn't the right time. So they ended up putting it on Netflix and did a deal with them. I don't know. But yeah, I've got one more bit of news and you can ask me a question. This is actually computer game news related again. I don't positive though, for once. So I don't know if you played these games back in the day, but did you ever play Monkey Island?
Yes, I really liked Monkey Island.
Okay. So back in the day, the original people that created it, there were a couple of them. Ron Gilbert was one, and the other one with Dave Grossman. They created the two original games back in the 90s. And then after that, they had a lot of other spin-offs that they weren't involved with. Mm-hmm. They sort of took the franchise and the rest of it. 31 years after the original game came out, the two creators are returning to do a new Monkey Island game.
Wow.
And it's going to be set after, they're basically doing like a reboot. They're setting it after the second game that they made and ignoring all of the others, like they did with some of the kind of Terminator films. They're just ignoring all the crap ones, and they're doing the new game. They co-wrote it. They've been working on this for like 2 years, and they're saying that they're just, not looking at 3 through 5 at all. This will be the original kind of Monkey Island 3, if you want, and it's going to follow on from that. So I'm really curious to see what it means.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. So Ron Gilbert, the other name I'm not so familiar with, but Ron Gilbert has continued to work in computer games, and
Yes.
he was one of the progenitors of the point and click adventure, and one of the standout features, especially for games around that time, is how brilliantly written and witty Monkey Island 1 and 2 is.
So good.
It's like the sword fighting is amazing, because to be a championship sword fighter in Monkey Island, you have to be good at trading insults, and so you have to get in a bunch of duels to work out what the appropriate retort is when somebody throws the insult at you, and it's just brilliantly clever and brilliantly funny, and just so much good fun. So yeah, that's a really incredible thing. So we'll get to see what's happened to Guybrush Threepwood.
Correct.
He was a pilot, and Governor Elaine Marley was his sort of love interest.
But Return to Monkey Island is apparently going to be due out later this year. And I'm very curious to see. So they're kind of continuing on. They're not invalidating the other games, they're saying. They're just kind of not really talking about them within the story. But yes, we're having Return to Monkey Island.
I've not played them for a very long time, but I strongly suspect that they would stand up. Good writing is good writing, right?
Yes.
And the graphics won't be, look as good as they did at the time. And bits and pieces might be a bit clunky, but the writing will stand by itself and will be a fantastic game to play through.
Okay. So what was your question before?
Oh yeah, so you've got Prime, haven't you?
Yes.
Amazon Prime. So a week after I paid good money to watch No Time to Die streaming on Prime, it went free. Actually, it wasn't a week, it was 6 days after I paid for it. So now it's free. I was just curious as to whether you knew that and whether you'd watched it and what you thought of it if you've seen it.
I saw it pop up recently, and I did the same thing as you. I looked at it and thought, oh, that must be to buy or to rent. And I clicked on it and it said free to watch. I thought, okay. But it's like 2.5 hours or something.
It's really it's 2 hours, 40 minutes. Yeah.
There you go. So I looked at it and thought, yes, but I think it was like 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, no, I'm not starting it at this time of night. Maybe earlier in the night, a different day. Yes. So I haven't watched it, but what do you think of it now that you've seen it?
So there was lots of, again, I don't follow social media at all, but there was lots of social media people wanting to get, all upset about things that were in the trailer and some of the things that were bound to happen in it. And I had an issue with none of it at all. But at the same time, I'm just an apologist ant.
Yeah, I've
never been massively into James Bond. Like, it was something that I liked watching the Roger Moore ones when I was a kid, and I watched. I'm pleased I got to see it, but it's not a topic that I find engaging in any way. So yeah, it was perfectly good. But there was nothing for me to either love or hate about it. It just kind of washed over me, like every other James Bond film I've ever seen, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, well, I will get round to watching it at some point, but not too soon. Yeah, but it's free there for a while, so I don't need to worry about it. Okay, let's go on to our main feature, and everybody, brace yourself.
Hello, welcome back. In this episode, we're talking about something that we've actually talked about in the previous episode, which is Picard Season 2. When we talked about Picard the last time, only 2 episodes of Season 2 had come out, and we talked about sort of what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it, our hopes for it, where we thought it was going, and all that sort of stuff. We're now, I think, 7 episodes in, yes, 6 or 7 episodes in, and we know what the show has turned into. So we thought we'd sort of revisit how we feel about things now. So, Steve, why don't you Why didn't you kick us off?
Okay, we said this one's going to get salty. So, season 1 was quite good in places, and a couple of moments generally made me tear up because of the kind of the weight of the storytelling and the characters and the stuff we've been waiting to see for like 20 years or more. Not once during this entire season 2 have I felt that same kind of emotional level of commitment, not even nearly. The story is so splattered against the wall. There are so many different things that they're trying to do in 10 episodes that they've essentially dug a pit for themselves and created just the worst kind of story ever. If they'd done this over 22 episodes, then you may have been able to achieve it. It also has the terrible feel of, I'm going to raise it because it's true, the latest Star Wars trilogy, where you had different directors and different storytellers, where it felt like Pass the Parcel, where they had the worst idea, finished the film and threw it to the next one, and they had to make do, turn that into a story, and then throw it back and then do the same thing again. That's what it feels like here. The episodes don't continue. The different story threads don't connect with each other. They're written in parallel, perhaps, but they don't weave together. And you have so many disparate elements that it can't decide what it wants to be about. And that's probably the biggest crime. Never mind the things they do with the characters. Is that it can't decide what the story is about. There's no central premise. And we're 7 episodes in. So what was your first bullet point, Scott?
So my first bullet point, as we said before we started recording this part, was cultural vandalism. And I think there's a serious point there that more than any other fiction, and I totally appreciate most people won't feel the same as this, but more than any other character in fiction, Captain Picard means more to me than anything. Just, going through challenging times growing up, and when that show was on, I just looked up to him more than any other character, more than any other person. And to see a once beloved character twisted into ever more perverted and pathetic versions of their former selves, where every character is basically a child inhabiting an adult's body without agency. Nothing gets moved on in the plot. Like Rios becomes captured by ice, and because they've got some sort of message to make, they make the ice character an absolute moral monster, just a caricature of somebody in that position. And then he spends a little bit of time captured by ice, and he just gets rescued, and there's other than killing some time.
Yep.
There's no reason for that to have killing some time and making a moral pronouncement. And then that gets moved on to Raffi and Seven. Like, the main characters are hardly ever in a scene together anymore. Raffi and Seven are going around together.
Yep.
All of the other ones are completely separate and don't interact with each other.
It's like 7 people wrote 7 stories, and then they slapped them together.
It's funny you should say that. So the highlight of Picard for me is...
I know what your highlight is.
No, actually, we'll get to that. But the highlight of Picard, apart from that, the highlight of Picard to me is every Friday when it's on, after we both watched it, me and Barry Nugent send each other a bunch of WhatsApp messages analysing it. And the messages that we exchange are way more... It's genuinely the only thing that's keeping me watching it. And those messages are way more entertaining than the actual show itself.
Yep.
So I don't know whether to thank Barry or whether to say, you're the person that's making me watch this. Please stop. But it's... Yeah, so when you were saying that things are going in all sorts of directions and there's no permanence and, and things are just getting moved on, when I when I was watching the most recent episode 7, and getting ready to start sending my thoughts and feelings to Barry, I was watching the opening credits and I noticed something. And I thought, okay, I'm going to rewind and watch these opening credits again. So I watched the opening credits. And obviously in the opening credits, you've got, Patrick Stewart, Alison Peel, 7 of 9, Jerry Ryan.
Yep.
So you've got the main actors, and then following the short list of main actors that have made it into the credits, there are, and I counted them on Friday, 22 different producers credited in the opening credits of that show. Yeah. And that tells you, I think, all you need to know about the problems with that show. Yeah. They've all got their own particular axes to grind or messages that they want to get out, and there's no JMS that's like the creative force like pulling this all together.
No.
There's no David Lynch from Twin Peaks. This isn't the thing that's auteured. This is tag team incompetence. This is something that is being written and built by committee, and it's so obvious that that's what's happening.
Yeah
Because they'll do something one episode, and so there's one episode where Raffi and Seven gets in front of the police. They get beamed out of their car.
Yes,
they literally get transported out of their car, and in the very next episode they're saying that they can't do that to Rios because that would reveal that they were from outer space and that would disrupt the timeline. So they can't do the things that were done to them in the previous episode.
Yes.
And they can't disrupt the timeline. So in the very next episode, Rios takes the doctor and the kid onto the spaceship. He doesn't say, first of all, this is clearly there's a deep well here. So first of all, the kid says to Rios, "Are you from outer space?" And he says, "No, I'm from Chile. I only work in outer space."
Yeah,
which is a direct quote from Star Trek 4, when the woman asks Kirk, "Are you from outer space?" And he says, "No, I'm from Iowa. I only work in outer space."
Yes,
and this show has not earned the right to quote from stuff that went before it, but rather and Barry made this point in our ranting messages between each other, that if it suddenly looked like they had technology, he could have easily said, "No, I'm from a top secret NASA program," and that would be less disruptive to the timeline than him being like, "Oh, the kid said, 'Are you from outer space?' I'll just teleport them to my spaceship and let them look around."
Like, they fought so hard in the early episode for him to kind of conceal his transporter pin, and like he lost it, and then the kid had it and he traded it back off the kid, and so he got it. And then in the same episode where they beams the kid to the bloody spaceship, Picard is just picked up by the FBI and he throws his transporter pin like under the bar where no one can find it. So when he's taken into custody, they haven't got anything to show that he's from outer space. I'm like, well, it's a bit bloody late. There's a kid and a doctor. The butterfly effect. They kept talking about this. That's gone completely out the window. It's just... So I wrote down some of the things that the story was probably about at one point. You said like there's 22 producers. Now there's so many things going on that none of it makes any sense. So here we go. You've got all the societal problems and the homelessness versus the background to the story of the space race and the fact that one of Picard's ancestors is going into space, and doesn't want to go on this mission of having mental health problems. And then you've got young Guinan who's talking about all of these things. That could have been the whole kind of theme for the story. The fact that not only is she struggling with it without Q's interference, and what the hell's Q doing? He's a shrink and he's lost his powers. And that could have been a fascinating story. The fact that he's done this, he's brought them to this time. He's going to mess with Picard and put him on trial. Where's the trial? What trial? When suddenly he loses his powers because his mind is going. That could have been an entire story. You got the thing to do with the Borg Queen back in the 21st century who's going to try and take over. That could have been a whole story. You've got all the Laris stuff and the Watcher, which ties back to the original series, which there again, they haven't earned at all. You've got all the Dr. Sung, another Sung, funny that, who looks remarkably like Brent Spiner.
And whose daughter looks exactly like the woman from the previous season.
I'll come back to that in a minute. Then you've got all of the mother and father stuff to do with Picard and his parental issues and all the fact that he can't connect to people and he's doesn't form strong emotional bonds with women in his relationships because he's issued with that. That could have been an entire story. Then you've got all the stuff to do with Seven, the fact that suddenly she's bubbly and she's got a personality and she's no longer more robotic because people were willing to talk to her. That could have been a whole arc. And there's a bunch of other stuff in there. And all of this has happened in 7 episodes, to the point where they've thrown so many things into the pot that none of it makes any sense. And even if they'd pared it down to 3, it could still have been an interesting show. And now none of them are interesting at all.
Yeah, it's incomprehensible. It reminds me of one of the, that game that you used to play as a kid where you had a piece of paper and then somebody would draw like somebody's head and then you would fold that over and then you would draw like somebody's upper body and then fold that over and then somebody else would draw the legs and then you fold it over and then somebody else would draw the feet. That's what this show kind of feels like. There's no coherence through any of it, and you're exactly right. The issues that Picard had with his father,
that was the only good bit I enjoyed because it was James Callis, and James Callis could read the phone book, and I would watch him do it.
I tell you what, as soon as when he first came on the screen, I couldn't work out whether it was James Callis or Dr. Bashir.
Yes. Not just you. For seconds, I was going. Wait,
I'm glad it wasn't just me because he was wearing a Deep Space Nine uniform as well. So that made me think even
dark
more.
Dark hair, and I went. Time's gone on a bit. I did see him in Game of Thrones, and he looked a bit different. And I thought, is that him? Is that? No, it's not. It can't be. And then he spoke, and I went, oh, that's Gaius Baltar. Oh, that's James Callis. Oh, why hasn't he got a French accent?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what's funny as well. That, so in the previous episode, one of the messages that I sent to Barry said, this whole episode is basically going to be me recounting a WhatsApp conversation I've had with Barry. But in the previous episode, at the end of the previous episode, I sent Barry a message saying, the strongest part of the show is what they're doing with Baltar and number 6, and then ... damn autocorrect. I mean, between Jurati and the Queen, because that's exactly it looked like they were doing a copy of Baltar and 6, right?
Yep.
And then in the very next episode, James Callis just bizarrely appears.
Yes.
For no especially good reason.
No. So here's the other one of the many crimes that the show has committed, the people behind it more so than everybody else. They've committed the crime that the original TV show Heroes did. The first season was excellent, and they said thereafter will be different cast, interesting stories, and we'll move on. But because the show was so popular, they served the actors, not the show, and they kept the actors on. And I suspect my gut feeling is all of these actors have got a 3-season deal because we know season 3 has been shot and it's the final one. And they've said to people like Brent Spiner, who I love, so how about we put you in another role as another Sung? Yep, sure. And then we've gone to Isa Bronis. So there isn't really a role for you, but we can make you someone's daughter who looks remarkably like that, and therefore you get an acting role. Yeah, right. I mean,
so Brent Spiner being in it, who's played a Sung, many different songs.
Every show. Enterprise, DS9, Voyager.
So that to me makes more sense than Isa Briones in it. And that makes no sense to me. No. And Laris, who was bizarrely Picard's love interest for about half of the first episode.
Yes.
All of a sudden is the Watcher.
But then she says, no, I'm not. I'm not a Romulan. I'm not a Romulan. And then, oh, look, I'm a Romulan. And like, why?
And so the other thing that annoyed, and this is a trivial thing to get annoyed about, but I might as well, this feels like therapy, so I'm going to say it.
Yes, we're saying it.
So the fact that, Picard and the Picard and Guinan had this big history, and she was, she's an Elorian that is a species of listeners, and she was there on the Enterprise, ostensibly running the bar, but she was, the wisest person on the ship.
Yep.
And the bar on the Enterprise is called 10 Forward, and there's this little reference, bit of fan service I didn't like, but I was willing to let it go, where Picard, decades after they served on the Enterprise together, Picard beams down, and it just so happens that the name of her bar is 10 Forward. Okay, I didn't like it, but it kind of makes some sort of context and some sort of sense.
Yep.
But the fact that when they go back in time 400 years before the Enterprise was built to 2024, and she's still running the bar called 10 Forwards, that means that bar predates the bar that was built on the Enterprise. And so she was like, she just had a word with the builders of this aircraft carrier, essentially. It said, look, yeah, I'm willing to run the bar, but can you just happen to put it on deck at the front of deck 10 and call it 10 Forwards? And that just makes it, I get the impression, so I have absolutely nothing against the young Guinan character.
Yeah,
it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that she's there, because there's an episode in the original Next Generation called two-part episode called Time's Arrow that has that's in the time of Mark Twain, so the 1800s, and Guinan is there looking like Whoopi Goldberg.
Of course,
and again, nothing against the current actress that they've got to play Guinan. I can only assume, though, that Whoopi Goldberg agreed to come back, took one look at the script and said, basically, what's the minimum requirement? What's the minimum contribution that you need from me that isn't going to get me sued?
I think
so they had her for half a day, and then they just replaced her with somebody else. That must have been how it happened, right? Because we would much rather see Whoopi Goldberg, and it would make much more sense to see Whoopi Goldberg.
I think she got basically kind of what she wanted to do it and thought would be brilliant. Plus, Patrick Stewart asked her live on The View, whatever it's called, and then she's gone, yeah, great. And then she's looked at it and gone, Patrick, I'm really busy with The View. I'd love to help you out. However, the script is shite. However, I can only come back for about a day's filming. And then they've got this younger actress in who has gone, yeah, I'll do that. I've never seen the show. I know nothing about the character, nothing about relationship, nothing about the show. You're perfect. Come and play this character.
I have absolutely nothing against her, and she's doing the best of a bad job. But there's one episode, I think it's episode 6, where they try to put Picard tries to do his old-fashioned, I'm very sensible and wise. It's when he's talking to Rene Picard.
Yeah,
I'm very sensible and wise, so I'm going to share some of my wisdom with you.
Yes.
But back in the day of the Next Generation, there was writers that were up to the task of putting those words in Picard's mouth.
Yes.
And so, and he tries to come across as wise, and the writers just aren't up to the task anymore of putting those right words in his mouth.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that young Guinan has. She's doing a perfectly good job, but what she's being asked to do is inappropriate and not right. And that's nothing to do with her, because I'm sure she just wants a paycheck out of it.
If you think so, I was going to talk to you about this actually as well. One thing I was going to raise is if you go back to the original series and the Next Generation, not all of them, but many of the writers were some of the best science fiction writers of that era. So not only were they weren't particularly fans of Star Trek per se, they were thought leaders. They were people thinking ahead who had already come up with a bunch of ideas that eventually we would come on to create as real technology in real life. And so they would take core concepts, whether it was of the courts with Melinda Scott Snodgrass, to then develop that into the thought of AI, whether it was Harlan Ellison, who would take ideas that they'd play around with, whether it's to do with morality plays or, religion or whatever it might be, or technology even, to create the Borg of something that's far beyond our level of perception. All of these things, they take cool ideas and craft them into good stories, and then they tell those stories. They weren't going with an agenda. We've said that, yes, Star Trek could be quite message heavy, but they weren't necessarily always going for that. They were going and thinking ahead. What they should have done, I suspect the writers they got in all had an axe to grind, all had something they wanted to talk about in the message, as the drinker says.
Yeah.
And they all were very, very focused on that, not on telling good stories, not on thinking ahead. And not once did they go, maybe we should get someone like, I don't know, Peter F. Hamilton. He's a good sci-fi writer. Ooh, Alistair Reynolds. He'd be a good, I bet he's got some cracking ideas for things. What about so-and-so? What about that? Yeah, there's a good idea. Not once would that have crossed their mind. And that is another one of the many crimes that the people behind this show have committed. The writers, as you said, are not up to par. They are massively inferior to anything we've seen. Really, that they're probably those and Alex Kurtzman, to be fair, who is essentially running the franchise in just what a dickhead. Just, I've run out of words.
Yeah, and Star Trek was from Gene Roddenberry's first conception of it and how it continued. The characters were flawed and they had their difficulties and disagreements, but it was always a show that sort of exemplifies, just whatever all our problems are at the moment, that it's a show about hope that we can overcome these difficulties. And there was lots of social commentary in the episodes.
Yeah,
but it wasn't as ham-fisted as it is now.
No,
because they're not doing social commentary; they're just preaching. But for a show that once really exemplified the highest aspirations for human potential, that tries to teach people we can be better than this, we can be better than things are now, that believes that no matter how bad things are, there's something good and noble about the human spirit, and they've completely turned that on its head. If you want to watch a good Star Trek show nowadays, watch the Orville, seriously, because that's doing Star Trek better than Star Trek is.
It is, and it's the old Star Trek of the many incarnations inspired many great engineers, scientists, astronauts, people that saw people going into space and thought, I want to do that for real, who studied hard, who drove technology forward, who invented things, who allowed people to go into space, on the International Space Station and all these other things. Nobody watching any of the modern Star Trek will push that far because they don't want to. They're not inspired by it. They're not driven by the same level because it doesn't have the same level of intelligence or the same aspirational ideas attached to it. It is merely reflecting things in the now, and everybody's fighting over what that message is, that it becomes a giant clustered mess of turgid crap. Okay, let's speak of one highlight I know you want to talk about. Alison Pill, Dr. Girardi.
Yeah, I'm quite the fan of Dr. Girardi and her performance
and her red dress.
So, right, sorry, you've brought me onto another topic. I've never watched an episode of Star Trek before that stops to have a musical number in the middle of it. What were they even thinking? It wasn't even a short musical number, right?
No, but here's the weird thing, right? So I get the idea, though. She needs to create a distraction. And because she's now essentially the Borg queen, she can control technology and EMP and everything else, right? So she can cause the power outage. Totally understandable, totally believable, right? I get that. And she can control the lighting so it falls on her and everyone looks up and goes, oh, what's this? Someone's going to sing. And then she starts singing, right? Does she also control the band through telepathy? Why did they start playing that tune at the very moment she started singing and they knew exactly what she was going to do as if it was rehearsed? There was no logic to it. If she'd gone and touched them all and with the neck things and made them all part of the Borg collective, then she could control them, then that's believable. But it's like they've gone, it's like that movie pitch thing. So why does that happen? I don't know. But how does that matter? Barely inconvenient.
I'm going to need you to get all the way off my back.
How did the band know when to start playing? I don't know that. That's basically what it is.
Yeah,
Ryan's
and
going,
it's the same. It's a minor version, other than the fact that it was a musical number in the middle of an episode of Star Trek, which I will never forgive them for. It's exactly the same as at the end of Rise of Skywalker, where there's 10,000 Star Destroyers there, or the end of Picard season 1, where there's 10,000 Federation ships there. It's this consequence of, without any thought to logic or motivations or how it fits in with the story, we're just going to do whatever is cool now.
Yes.
And not worry about the consequences. I'm not saying the musical number was cool. I'm saying that's what their thought process was.
Yep.
It wasn't. Does this make sense? Does this fit in with things? It's just, it would be cool.
Do you know what it is? It's the Damon Lindelof mode of storytelling. Mm-hmm. It's the, but you should enjoy the journey. But I didn't enjoy the journey. Why was that thing there? It doesn't matter. What do you mean it doesn't matter? Then why did you show me? Why was it important? It doesn't matter. It's about I didn't enjoy the journey at all. It made no sense. It's the lost Lindelof approach of storytelling.
Yeah.
Have this thing. It would be cool. Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah. Have a car chase. Why? That'd be cool. Oh, okay. Have an escape from ice. Why? That'd be cool, wouldn't it? I guess. Right. Put that on the board. And then
there's no continuity in the, like these things. The whole of the show. Once the first 2 episodes I really liked, but the whole of the show since then has just become a series of sketches, right? It's like not, in the same way, it's not a comedy, although lots of it is laughable, but it's not a comedy. But it's just a bunch of sketches nowadays. And in the last episode, it was so blatant that none of these characters are together. At best, they're speaking over communicators, and most of the time they're completely separate from each other and not interacting in any way at all. It's extremely bizarre.
Yeah, it just has no sense to it. And you know how in later seasons of Next Generation, in the films, Deanna Troi gave up doing the accent and gave up any attempt to be Beta Z. Jerry Ryan has essentially gone, I'm just going to stop being Seven now. No one gives a shit. And so she's just stopped being, but they're saying, but she's more free. And she's that character is now closer to real Jerry Ryan than anybody's ever seen on screen ever before in anything she's ever done, because it doesn't matter. And she doesn't need to. Nobody's going to complain about it. It's that thing of where someone says there are no bad ideas and they all go up on the board. And then someone goes, right, make that into an episode. And some poor sod who's got no talent has to make that into an episode. And that's what this show is.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so many good ideas they could have done. Like the guilt over the young Romulan cadet.
Well, that's the problem. Sorry to interrupt. You're right. There are so many good ideas that they could have done.
Yeah.
But they just chose to do all of them. Right?
Badly. All of them badly.
Yeah.
Elnor, I loved him in season 1. He was so good. And now, because he's dead, they have to keep having appear every, 6 episodes because he's on contract.
Yeah.
He has to appear as a cameo, as a vision that he might be dead. Oh, he's actually dead, but he's not. But there he is. Oh, right. Okay. Come back in 3 episodes, mate, so we can keep you on contract. See for season 3 when you come back to life. It's it's just a mess of so many things. And when Patrick Stewart said, bless him, you'll be seeing things in this season of Picard that you've never seen before, he was right. All of them are bad.
Yeah.
All of them are bad ideas that we've never seen before. I mean, if they'd stuck to the original core idea of the Borg and his mother and the problems with his family and relationships, and yes, they've gone back to 21st century, but they've done that so many times. You could forgive them for some of that. They did it in the original series. They did it with, put a headband around his ears, and that's how Elnor gets away, just like Spock did. There's things they could have done. They could have played with. That you've got Seven there to do the Borg stuff, but they just, I don't know. They just lost their way. I can't understand what they were trying to do with this show. Like, the whole reason they've gone back in time is that at some point in a couple of days from whenever they're going to go back to, an event happens that changes the course of history, that turns Earth down this dark path to become this culturally hating, xenophobic species that goes around destroying other races and dominating them. At this point, I think it's complete apathy. That's why they do it. They're just so fed up.
Oh, we know this point. So they've done that in previous episodes. So in the original Star Trek, there was the episode Mirror Mirror,
yep.
which was where there was this dark timeline. Essentially, they didn't do it in Next Generation. They did it in Deep Space Nine. They did it in Enterprise as well, and they did it really well. And there's a couple of really good books. One particular that called Dark Mirror that was very, very good. So they've done that sort of dark timeline thing before and done it very well. But this is a failing on every level. First of all, they should have stuck with that for the whole of the season.
Yes.
Rather than just paying lip service to it. And there is an interesting idea there in terms of going backwards in time to the point where that timeline diverged from this timeline to try and put things right. There is good ideas in there, but nobody cares about these ideas. I think a description of the whole problem with this show is just nobody cares. They want to get their oar in about the one particular bit that means something to them.
Yes,
and they have these 22 producers wanting all their ideas heard, and they just say to some poor intern writer, "You just figure it out," and then there's no way that this can be a coherent vision. There's no way that it can be altered with that many producers and people weighing in on what needs to happen next.
You needed. I'm gonna use the name that I know he's not a popular character now, but you needed, as you say, a Joss Whedon, a JMS, a Michael Piller, bless him, remember, from, he was DS9, wasn't he? And early stages of Voyager, him and his son did Voyager and stuff too. And Rick Berman and Brannon Braga, and all these people that, between 1 or 2 and then later on in Battlestar Galactica, of course, we have the fantastic, great creator of the new BSG, whose name's completely lost my... Ron
Moore.
Thank you. So all of these people had some of the best writers in the business working for them across, Buffy and Angel and Battlestar and all the Star Treks. And they called in experts, as we've said, and said, right, he's a great science fiction person or she's a great science fiction writer. Get her in to do something. Get her to do this. Get her to do that. And they come up with some cracking ideas. I don't understand why there wasn't a driving force behind this one person, that even if you had all these 20 other writers who all get a producer credit, there wasn't someone at the top who could have been, Patrick Stewart, for all we know, or in season 1, who was it they got rid of? Remember? Michael Chabon.
Oh, yeah.
Because season 1 was way better. They got rid of Chabon in season 2, who would have gone, no, that makes no sense. If I'm controlling these strands and trying to weave them all together, you've got too many. Get rid of that. Get rid of that message. Get rid of this. Yes, you can have that because that's relevant social commentary to the story. No, those 12 other things aren't relevant and we can't squeeze them in. Strip it down. There's no one saying that. There's no one saying no to them. And you end up with so many things that they're essentially running out of time every episode. And I don't know what they're trying to do with it. That's still one thing I don't understand. I'm 70% of the way through this season, and I don't understand what they're trying to say. I don't think anybody can, because there's too many cooks.
I think it's I so wish I'm wrong on what I'm about to say, but I think it's impossible for us to watch the final 3 episodes and go, oh, yeah, I understand. They've pulled all those threads together, and it's consistent and it makes sense. And I so wish that we hadn't put out episode 68 because it just showed how wrong we were to criticize them. Like, if that happens, episode 69, I would be more than happy to spend the whole of episode 69 apologizing to them. But I don't think.
It's not going to happen.
I don't think that's a likely idea for the episode.
Last 2 Star Trek films, if the last 4 seasons of STD are anything to go by, the person in charge at the very top is driving this entire franchise off a cliff with nobody at the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
My only hope is that season 3, with the return of some of the original crew from Next Generation, it can have some semblance of it being reasonably a good send-off.
So I decided that I wasn't even going to bother with season 3. It was just too harrowing. And then they did that trailer where you couldn't see anything.
Nope.
It just had all the voices. And I was like, damn it, you've done it again. Because one of the highlights of season 1 for me was when he went to see Riker and Troy. 100%. And it wasn't the big scene where we had Riker commanding a fleet of ships at the end of the episode, because that made, I mean, at the time I said that makes no sense. Things make so much less sense now that that seems perfectly logical. But
reasonable, perfectly reasonable.
But the episode that I thought was really special, where it was Riker and Deanna and their child and the life that they'd made for themselves, and the fact that, you know, Picard was still very special to them. You know, there was real emotional resonance there.
Yep.
And that makes me want to watch season 3. But I have my doubts that they even have the capacity to do something honourable with those characters anymore.
Yeah. And who do you think the lead writer was on that awesome episode, Nepenthe?
Michael Chabon.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the sad and shocking thing, that it was Michael Chabon. You know, there's a bunch of other people who apparently on the credits are writing for it, but he's one of the top 2. And I just I don't see how they could get it so wrong. But they've only got one more season and they've already filmed it. I wish they'd done more with John Delancey and Q. He had a brilliant thing for 2 minutes, and then they've just done nothing with him.
And that's the thing that you need. I kind of agree that you need to use his character sparingly, right? You don't want him there front and center for all 7 episodes, because that would just be too much. But having said that, they're not using him in a sensible way at all. Yeah. And there was episodes of the Next Generation where he did lose all of his powers and he had to just become a crew member on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting, and how he got his powers back. And they went into things about the Q continuum in Star Trek Voyager. But they're not doing anything coherent with him.
No. If the whole show had been about him at a last desperate attempt to put Picard on trial because he's losing his mind, and that reality keeps fracturing because Q is breaking apart, and it's nothing to do with Picard, it's that he's caught in a loop of his own brain, and that he's essentially getting some kind of dementia that eventually, when he dies, he's going to take half the galaxy with it. And it's up to Picard to try and fix him. That would have been an amazing kind of story. The two of them playing chess with each other throughout the story, and with other people as players, that would have been good. Nope, we're not getting that. We're just getting this thing that just sits there.
But anyway, you still with us, Dion?
I think our faithful listener has gone. Sorry, Dion. Yeah, you can tell we're really enjoying the show. That's why we've been talking about it for so long.
That's why we've dedicated 2 entire episodes to talking about it.
Oh, man. If you want some really good rants, go and watch Red Letter Media talk about why all the reasons they don't like the show, and the drinker's essentially just given up on Star Trek and Star Wars because he couldn't care anymore. He's just stopped. Yeah, I don't blame him. Once great characters, as you said, becoming shadows of the former self. So I'll finish this season out. I'll struggle through season 3 because it's already been filmed. I just want to see the end of it. But I think it was a mistake to bring it back. I hate to say it.
I completely agree. I thought it was shot of Patrick Stewart at a convention when he talks about his history with Star Trek and why he avoided doing anything with it, and talking about all of this stuff. And he then says in front of this audience, I'm here to tell you that Captain Picard is back. And they just go absolutely wild. And they go so wild that he just bursts into tears. And that was such an exciting moment that they've just failed to live up to the promise that was there within the show at that time. And even season 1, which had its flaws, I really enjoy, but this is just it. I find it really hard to believe that the people behind the show care about it in the slightest.
No, not to the degree of the actual fans who've built it for them over the last 40 years, 50 years at this point. It's yeah. It's a shame. It's a great shame. But thankfully, there's lots of other good stuff out there. Yeah. So this is bringing it to a close for me, I think, with the end of Picard season 3. I don't think I want to try any of the other new shows that are coming in Star Trek. I think I'm going to just let it rest and go back to watch some of the good stuff from back in the day. So, or go watch Orville instead, because that's really
Orville is brilliant.
Yeah,
it's just, and there's a bit of misplaced humor in the first few episodes, but it really is Seth MacFarlane's love letter to Star Trek. And
season
I think
3
it's great.
Is coming fairly soon this year as well, so that watch out for that. But I think we're kind of done now. I think I've I could rant for another hour, but our listener would have stopped listening at this point. So it'd just be for you and me. So if you're still with us, faithful listener, and you've bothered to watch Star Trek Picard, why? But also let us know. Come onto the Facebook group and talk to us. Tell us all of your gripes about the show, because we love that. We are grouchy old geeks after all. Anyway, we will be back next month to talk about something completely different. I promise, unless we're turned around and the show is the best thing ever. It won't be. But we'll be back next month. But in the meantime, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Good night.
Good night.